The Milano drifted through what Peter Quill's nav computer insisted was deep space in the Andromeda sector, coordinates provided by a Xandarian broker who'd claimed there was salvage worth millions at an abandoned research station. The ship's interior played Mr. Blue Sky at a volume that Rocket Raccoon had described as aggressively optimistic for someone about to get screwed over by another shady job offer. "I'm just saying," Rocket called from his position at the weapons console, his small furry form barely visible over the control panel he'd modified 17 times to accommodate his height. When a broker uses the phrase absolutely legitimate salvage rights, what he actually means is please get shot at by whoever really owns this stuff so I don't have to. "You're so cynical," Peter replied from the pilot's seat, his fingers drumming on the controls in rhythm with the music. "Not every job is a setup. Sometimes a derelict station is just a derelict station full of valuable tech that nobody wants anymore. Name one time that was actually true. That neutron core we grabbed from the Kree outpost, which turned out to be bait for a trap that almost got us killed. The sovereign artifacts on Contraxia, also a trap. You noticed that pattern, right? Everything's a trap? Okay, you know what? You're making it hard to stay optimistic here, Rocket." The Milano's sensors pinged, indicating they'd reached the coordinates. Through the viewport, a massive structure floated against the starfield, a station that looked vaguely Kree in design, all angular architecture and bioluminescent power conduits, but older than anything Peter had encountered in his years of galactic scavenging. "That doesn't look abandoned," Rocket observed, studying his tactical displays. "I'm reading minimal power signatures, but the reactor's still online. And those aren't standard Kree power readings. Quill, this tech is weird. Like, really weird. My sensors can't even classify half the materials that station's built from." "Weird means valuable," Peter decided, guiding the Milano toward the station's docking port. "We scan it, we grab anything portable that looks expensive, we're gone in 20 minutes. Simple smash and grab." When you say simple smash and grab, the universe hears complicated disaster that requires heroic escape. That was one time. It was 17 times. I counted. The Milano docked with the station's external airlock, surprisingly compatible with their ship's systems, despite the apparent age difference. Peter and Rocket suited up, grabbed their standard salvage gear. Rocket's modified plasma rifle, Peter's quad blasters, scanning equipment, and a portable speaker playing the awesome mix because Peter refused to work in silence, and entered the station. The interior was a cathedral of ancient technology. Corridors glowed with bioluminescence that pulsed in patterns Peter's translator couldn't interpret. Holographic displays showed star charts that seemed to shift between different configurations as if the data was alive. Observing them? Hard to tell. "This is giving me serious bad vibes," Rocket muttered, his weapon raised as they moved through the station. "The power distribution is all wrong. It's like the station is routing energy to specific systems on purpose, like it's waiting for something." "Waiting for us, maybe?" Peter suggested, approaching what looked like a central data core. "We're salvagers. We salvage. This looks salvageable." He connected his scanner to the core, initiating a download of whatever data the ancient system contained. The station responded immediately, not with alarms or defenses, but with something stranger. The holographic displays all shifted simultaneously to show a single image, a massive spherical structure surrounded by a fleet of triangular ships that Peter didn't recognize. The image was tagged with symbols that his translator rendered as construction progress, 63%, classification, ultimate weapon, designation, Death Star. Death Star? Peter read aloud. That's a terrible name for a weapon. Way too on the nose. Who names their ultimate weapon Death Star? At least call it something subtle like Peace Moon or Diplomatic Resolution Sphere or... Quill, we got company. Rocket interrupted, his sensors screaming warnings. Multiple contacts just jumped into the system. Big ones, really big. And they're broadcasting on frequencies I've never encountered before. Through the station's external viewports, space distorted, but not the familiar ripple of MCU jump points or the quantum tunnel effect of Xandarian FTL. This was different. Ships literally tearing themselves out of a different dimension of space. Emerging from what Peter's limited understanding of astrophysics suggested was hyperspace, rather than any jump technology he knew. The ships were massive, triangular, bristling with weapons emplacements and fighter bays, star destroyers, though Peter had no context for that designation, only the immediate tactical assessment that they were surrounded by hostile capital ships that made Kree warships look subtle by comparison. Okay, Peter said, his salvager's instinct for danger overriding his curiosity about the strange ships. Okay, we're leaving. Data downloaded, grab nothing else. Straight back to the Milano. Attention unknown vessel. A voice boomed through every speaker in the station, rendered in clipped, authoritative tones that Peter's translator struggled with before settling on Galactic Basic as the closest linguistic match. You have violated Imperial space and accessed classified military data. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with immediate termination. Imperial? Rocket repeated. Quill, there's no Empire in any database I've got. Not Kree, not Skrull, not Shi'ar, nothing. These guys aren't from our galaxy. Different galaxy, same problems, Peter muttered, already running toward the Milano. Fascist military government, classified data, we definitely shouldn't have. Overwhelming force threatening to kill us. It's like the universe has a template and just keeps reusing it. They reached the Milano with seconds to spare before the Star Destroyers deployed fighters. Sleek angular craft that Peter would later learn were TIE fighters, but in this moment were just a whole lot of small fast things trying to kill us. Rocket, get on weapons, Peter shouted, throwing himself into the pilot's seat and firing up the Milano's engines. I'm getting us out of here. Out where? Rocket demanded, already charging the ship's defensive systems. We don't know where here is. The star charts are all wrong. The constellations don't match anything in our database. Quill, I think we're actually in a different galaxy. Then we jump back to our galaxy. With what jump coordinates? We don't know how we got here. The first TIE fighter barrage struck the Milano's shields, and Peter made the split-second tactical assessment that would define the next several hours. Fight or flight. The Star Destroyers were deploying what looked like dozens of fighters. The station behind them was activating defensive systems that targeted everything indiscriminately. And directly ahead, his sensors detected Asteroid field, Peter said, a plan forming with the characteristic brilliant or suicidal, often both quality, that had kept him alive through years of increasingly improbable adventures. There's a massive asteroid field at bearing 270. We go through it. Through it? Rocket's voice climbed an octave. Quill, those asteroids are the size of moons. The density is insane. Nobody flies through that. It's a navigation hazard that every sane pilot avoids. Good thing I'm not sane, Peter replied, already accelerating toward the field. I'm Star-Lord, and Star-Lord doesn't do sane piloting. Star-Lord does impossible piloting that works anyway. I hate you so much right now. You love me. You'd be bored without me. I'd be alive without you. The Milano dove toward the asteroid field with TIE fighters in pursuit and Star Destroyers launching additional squadrons. Peter's hands danced across the controls, with the practiced ease of someone who'd been flying since he was 10 years old, who'd piloted everything from Ravager M ships to Sovereign attack craft, who'd learned that the secret to impossible flying was treating it like dancing. Feel the rhythm, trust your instincts, and never, ever think too hard about the physics. "We need music," Peter announced, reaching for his portable player. "Can't do impossible flying without the right soundtrack. We need shields. We need weapons online. We need an escape plan," Rocket countered, but his hands were already working the weapons console with familiar efficiency. "Music is not a tactical priority." "Music is always a tactical priority," Peter corrected, scrolling through his awesome mix Volume 2. "Let's see. Asteroids, being chased, impossible odds, need something upbeat to offset the mortal danger. Perfect." He hit play, and "Come and Get Your Love" by Redbone erupted through the Milano speakers at a volume that made the hull vibrate. The song blasted not just through the ship's interior, but through external speakers that Peter had installed specifically for the psychological warfare value of making enemies question what kind of idiot played Earth music during combat. "Come and get your love," Peter sang along as the Milano entered the asteroid field, his piloting shifting into something that wasn't quite combat flying and wasn't quite dancing, but somehow combined both into a style that made sense to exactly one person in either galaxy. The TIE fighters followed, their pilots executing standard Imperial pursuit protocols: maintain formation, use numerical superiority, coordinate fire to overwhelm the target's shields through sustained barrage. But their protocols didn't account for a pilot who flew like he was dancing to 70s funk. Peter twisted the Milano through gaps between asteroids that his computer insisted were too narrow for safe passage. He rolled the ship 90 degrees, killed forward thrust while firing lateral thrusters, and essentially made the Milano slide sideways through space in a maneuver that violated every principle of conventional astrogation, but worked perfectly because asteroids were predictable, and Imperial pilots apparently weren't trained for targets that didn't follow predicted flight paths. "Quill, you just flew through a gap that was 6 meters narrower than our ship's wingspan," Rocket shouted over the music. "Yeah, but I angled it," Peter shouted back, executing a barrel roll that put 3 asteroids between the Milano and the pursuing TIE fighters. "You gotta trust the angles, Rocket. The angles are everything. The angles are going to get us killed." A TIE fighter attempted to follow Peter's barrel roll and misjudged the asteroid spacing. The fighter clipped a massive space rock, tumbled out of control, and exploded against another asteroid in a display that made the rest of the Imperial squadron hesitate. "Their pilots aren't used to this," Rocket observed, analyzing enemy flight patterns with tactical precision that balanced Peter's chaos. "They're flying like they expect you to fly predictably, like there's a correct way to navigate asteroid fields, and they're trained for it. But you're flying like a maniac, so their training doesn't help." "Maniac is such a negative word," Peter replied, threading the Milano through a cluster of asteroids that his nav computer was literally screaming warnings about. "I prefer creative improviser with excellent taste in music." The TIE fighters regrouped, adapting their tactics. They split into wings, attempting to flank the Milano and force it into a kill box, where concentrated fire could overwhelm the ship's shields. "They're adapting," Rocket warned. "Quill, they're trying to—" "I see them," Peter interrupted, his enhanced spatial awareness, the one gift from his celestial heritage that lingered even after Ego's death, letting him track multiple threats simultaneously. "Hang on. This is going to get weird." He killed the forward engines entirely, fired reverse thrusters at maximum, and essentially made the Milano stop dead in space. The flanking TIE fighters, expecting their target to continue forward, overshot their positions and flew directly into the kill zone they'd been trying to create. Rocket fired. The Milano's plasma cannons, technology. The TIE fighters' shields weren't designed to counter, because plasma weapons didn't exist in the Star Wars galaxy, the same way they did in the MCU. Tore through two fighters before they could correct their positions. "Got 'em," Rocket crowed. "Ha! Your stupid reverse thrust maneuver actually worked." "My maneuvers always work," Peter replied, re-engaging forward thrust and accelerating deeper into the asteroid field. "I'm an amazing pilot. People should recognize my amazing piloting more often. Your amazing piloting just got us chased through an asteroid field by space fascists in a galaxy we don't recognize." Details. The song changed, the awesome mix shuffling to "Hooked on a Feeling" by Blue Swede, and Peter's piloting shifted with it. The rhythm was different, the energy more driving, and somehow his hands on the controls matched the beat without conscious thought. More TIE fighters pursued, their numbers seemingly endless as the Star Destroyers continued deploying squadrons. But the asteroid field was Peter's element now. Three-dimensional space filled with obstacles that required intuition and improvisation, rather than rigid tactical doctrine. He flew upside down relative to the pursuing fighters, using an asteroid's gravity well to slingshot the Milano around, in a maneuver that would have killed a normal pilot through G-forces, but which Peter's physiology enhanced beyond human norms through years of exposure to cosmic radiation, alien technology, and one very angry god, handled with barely a grunt of discomfort. "You're insane!" Rocket shouted, though his tone carried admiration alongside terror. "This is insane. We're going to die." "We're not going to die," Peter corrected, executing a corkscrew roll through a gap between three asteroids that were actively colliding with each other. "We're going to escape with style, because that's what we do. We're guardians of the galaxy. We don't just survive. We look good doing it. We're guardians in the wrong galaxy." Details. But even as Peter's piloting defied Imperial tactical expectations, even as Rocket's weapons picked off TIE fighters with efficiency that suggested the Guardians' combat experience translated across universes, the larger strategic picture was becoming clear. The Star Destroyers weren't just chasing them, they were herding them, pushing them deeper into the asteroid field toward something. "Quill," Rocket said, his sensors painting a picture that made even the optimistic Guardian reconsider their situation. "There's something big ahead, really big. It's like another station, a base. It's built into a massive asteroid, and it's armed. If we keep going this direction, we're going to fly right into its defensive perimeter." "Then we don't go that direction," Peter decided, cranking the Milano into a turn that made the ship's inertial dampeners scream in protest. "We go up. There is no up in space, but we're going there anyway." He fired the Milano's vertical thrusters, a modification he'd added specifically for situations where traditional flight paths were boring, and essentially launched the ship perpendicular to the plane of the asteroid field. The TIE fighters attempted to follow, but their rigid flight doctrine emphasized horizontal pursuit, and several fighters collided with asteroids when they tried to match Peter's vertical acceleration. "It's working," Rocket celebrated, firing at the pursuing craft. "They can't follow the vertical. Their training doesn't account for three-dimensional improvisation." "That's because they're thinking in 2 dimensions," Peter shouted over the music. "You gotta think in 3 dimensions, or 4 if you count time, or 5 if you count. Actually, I'm not sure what the 5th dimension is, but I bet it's awesome." The Milano burst free of the asteroid field's upper boundary, and for a moment, just a moment, they were clear. Open space stretched before them. The Star Destroyers still distant, the TIE fighters regrouping behind them. "Now we jump," Peter said, already reaching for the FTL controls. "Rocket, plot a course for literally anywhere that isn't here." "I'm trying," Rocket replied, his hands flying over the navigation computer. "But Quill, the star charts are completely wrong. I'm feeding in our sensor data, and the computer can't find a single reference point that matches our galaxy's stellar cartography. We're not just in a different sector. We're in a completely different galaxy, with different stars, different navigation beacons, everything." "Then we jump blind," Peter decided. "Pick a direction, maximum distance, and—" "Incoming!" Rocket screamed. From the asteroid field's depths, a ship emerged that made even Peter Quill, who'd faced down Ronan the Accuser, fought Ego the Living Planet, and survived Thanos, pause in genuine concern. It was an Imperial Star Destroyer, yes. But this one was different, larger, sleeker. Its hull was painted not in the standard gray of Imperial forces, but in distinctive black, and it moved with precision that suggested a crew that actually knew what they were doing, rather than relying on overwhelming force. "That's a special ship," Rocket observed, with the particular tone he used when analyzing threats that exceeded their normal pay grade. "Look at the engine configuration, the weapon placements, the fact that it's painted black, like it wants everyone to know it's special. That's a command ship. That's somebody important's ship." The Star Destroyer's communications array activated, and a new voice came through the Milano's receivers. Younger than the first Imperial transmission, carrying authority that sounded earned rather than bureaucratic. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Sienna Rhee of the Imperial Star Destroyer Executor. Your piloting is impressive, unorthodox, unlike anything in our tactical databases. But you're carrying classified intelligence that the Empire cannot permit to leave this system. Stand down, return the data, and I give you my word, you'll be treated as prisoners of war rather than criminals. Continue fleeing, and I'll be forced to destroy your ship. You have 30 seconds to decide." Peter looked at Rocket. Rocket looked at Peter. The awesome mix played "Hooked on a Feeling" at inappropriate volume for a hostage negotiation. "She sounds reasonable," Rocket offered. "For a space fascist. Maybe we should—" "30 seconds, huh?" Peter interrupted, a plan forming that was either brilliant or catastrophic. "Rocket, how fast can you analyze that Imperial data we downloaded?" "In 30 seconds? I can't even decrypt the file headers in—" "Then we're keeping it," Peter decided. "Because if they're this desperate to get it back, it must be valuable. And valuable means leverage. Leverage means options. Options mean— It means you're going to do something stupid and I'm going to regret not stunning you when I had the chance," Rocket finished. "Exactly," Peter confirmed cheerfully. He activated his comm, broadcasting back to the Imperial commander. "Commander Rhee, this is Peter Quill of the, Milano. I appreciate the professional courtesy. I really do. But here's the thing. We didn't know this was classified Imperial data. We thought it was abandoned salvage in neutral space. So this is all a big misunderstanding. And I'm sure we can work something out like reasonable adults who aren't shooting at each other." "Return the data and we'll discuss terms," Commander Rhee replied. "Here's my counteroffer," Peter said, already adjusting the Milano's heading toward the one gap in the Imperial formation he could see. "We keep the data as insurance that you won't blow us up while we figure out how to get back to our galaxy. Once we're home, you can have your classified stuff back. Everybody wins. You get your data, we get to not die, and—" "You have 10 seconds to comply," Rhee interrupted, her tone hardening. "I don't make empty threats, Mr. Quill. Return the data or I will fire." "Quill," Rocket warned, watching weapon systems activate across the Imperial fleet. She means it. Those aren't bluffs. Those are targeting locks. We need to... Rocket, Peter said calmly, his hands steady on the controls, despite the impossible odds, despite being in the wrong galaxy, despite facing down an enemy fleet that could vaporize the Milano with concentrated fire. Do you trust me? No, Rocket replied honestly. But I'm here anyway, so I guess we're doing this. Then hold on to something, Peter advised, cranking the awesome mix to maximum volume. Because we're going back into that asteroid field. But this time, we're not just flying through it. Then what are we doing? Peter Quill smiled, the particular smile that meant he'd just thought of something simultaneously brilliant and insane. We're flying through an asteroid, not around it, through it. Because I just bet these Imperial ships have never seen anyone crazy enough to try that. That's because nobody's that crazy. I am, Peter confirmed cheerfully. I'm Star-Lord, and Star-Lord does the impossible with style. The Milano accelerated back toward the asteroid field, directly toward the largest asteroid Peter's sensors could detect. A moon-sized chunk of rock and ice that sensors indicated was riddled with caverns and tunnels from ancient mining operations. The Imperial fleet opened fire. Turbo laser bolts, massive green energy bursts that would have disabled Kree warships, converged on the Milano's position. Peter flew through the barrage like he was dancing, because in his mind, he was. The music was his rhythm, the asteroids were his partners, and the Imperial Navy was the audience about to witness the greatest piloting performance either galaxy had ever seen. Come and get your love, Peter sang as the Milano dove toward the asteroid's surface, searching for the tunnel entrance his sensors insisted existed. Come and get your love. Come and get your love now. I'm going to kill you if we survive this, Rocket screamed. You always say that, Peter replied cheerfully. And then the Milano found the tunnel, a massive cavern entrance that looked barely wide enough for the ship to fit through. And Peter didn't slow down, didn't hesitate, just flew straight into the asteroid's interior with the absolute confidence of someone who'd survived worse through sheer stubbornness and occasionally accidental competence. The tunnel was dark, narrow, filled with unexpected turns and obstacles that would kill any pilot who wasn't flying on pure instinct and inappropriate musical accompaniment. Peter Quill flew through it anyway, because that's what Star-Lord did. And behind him, the Imperial fleet watched their target disappear into an asteroid through a tunnel no sane pilot would attempt, achieving the impossible through methods that violated every tactical principle the Empire understood. Commander Sienna Rhee stared at her tactical displays with expression mixing professional respect and genuine confusion. Did he just fly into an asteroid? Yes, Commander, her tactical officer confirmed. Sensors show he's navigating the interior tunnel system. His flight path is unpredictable, erratic. But he's maintaining speed and hasn't collided with any obstacles, despite the impossibility of his trajectory. Launch probe droids, Rhee commanded. I want to know who that pilot is, where he's from, and how he learned to fly like that. Because that wasn't Imperial training. That wasn't Rebel Alliance doctrine. That was something else entirely. Inside the asteroid, in the darkness lit only by the Milano's running lights and the glow from his awesome mix player, Peter Quill flew through impossible tunnels with a raccoon screaming warnings and a song about getting your love playing at volumes that made the ship rattle. And he smiled, because even in the wrong galaxy, even being chased by an empire, he didn't understand. Even flying through solid rock on nothing but instinct and earth music from decades ago. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, in the pilot's seat, doing the impossible, and looking damn good doing it, inside the asteroid. 2 minutes later, the tunnel twisted like it had been designed by someone who hated straight lines and loved cardiovascular emergencies. Peter guided the Milano through turns that required rotating the ship 90 degrees, killing lateral thrust, reigniting at different angles, all while maintaining forward momentum that kept them ahead of whatever Imperial pursuit would inevitably follow. "Left! Left!" Rocket screamed, his sensors painting a picture of the tunnel ahead faster than Peter's eyes could process the darkness. "I see it," Peter replied, cranking the Milano into a turn that made the ship's structural integrity warnings flash red. The ship's hull scraped against the tunnel wall with a grinding sound that would cost thousands of units to repair, if they survived to worry about repair costs. "You clearly didn't see it because we just lost 6 meters of hull plating." "Hull plating is replaceable. Our lives are, okay, technically we're both pretty hard to kill, but the principle stands." The awesome mix shifted to "I Want You Back" by the Jackson 5, and Peter's piloting unconsciously adjusted to match the tempo. Tighter turns, more aggressive acceleration patterns, the kind of flying that made sense to exactly 0 flight instructors across both galaxies, but worked perfectly for someone who'd learned that music and movement were fundamentally connected. "There's a split ahead," Rocket reported, studying the asteroid's interior structure through their sensors. "Left tunnel looks wider but slopes down toward the asteroid's core, where we'll probably get crushed by pressure. Right tunnel is narrow but leads toward an exit on the far side, and there's a middle path that my sensors can't fully map because it's got some kind of interference." "Middle path it is," Peter decided immediately. "That's literally the option I said we don't have information about." "Exactly. If our sensors can't map it, then Imperial sensors can't either. It's the least predictable choice. It's the stupidest choice." "Same thing." Peter guided the Milano into the middle tunnel and immediately understood why sensors had trouble. The walls were lined with some kind of crystalline formation that refracted their scanning beams and created interference patterns that looked like static, rendered in 3 dimensions. The crystals glowed faintly with bioluminescence that reminded Peter uncomfortably of Ego's planet, organic technology that was simultaneously beautiful and deeply wrong. "These crystals," Rocket said, his scientific curiosity overriding his terror for a moment. "Quill, these aren't natural. This is tech, really old tech, like predates anything in our galaxy old, and they're emitting energy signatures that match." He paused, running additional scans. "That match the Imperial data we downloaded. There's a connection. This asteroid wasn't randomly here. It was placed here, built here. This whole system is artificial. So we accidentally stumbled into an ancient installation containing classified Imperial data about something called a Death Star. And now, we're being chased through its interior tunnels by space fascists who really want their secrets back," Peter summarized. "That's very on-brand for us." "We should return the data," Rocket suggested, though his tone indicated he already knew Peter's response. "We're in an unknown galaxy, surrounded by enemies, with 0 resources and no way home. This isn't our fight, Quill. We could just give them the data, explain we're interdimensional tourists who got lost, and maybe they'd let us leave peacefully." "You believe that?" Peter challenged. "No," Rocket admitted. "I think they'd execute us to prevent intelligence leaks. Probably torture us first to see if we're part of some rival faction, and definitely confiscate the Milano for study. But it was worth suggesting the optimistic option before we commit to the fight an entire empire with 2 people and a ship plan. I appreciate your honesty, Peter replied. And for what it's worth, I think you're absolutely right about what they'd do. Which means we're keeping the data, we're escaping this asteroid, and we're finding whoever these rebellion guys are that the Imperial transmissions kept mentioning as enemies. Because if there's a rebellion against an evil empire, they're probably the good guys. And we're guardians. We help good guys. We're guardians in the wrong galaxy, Rocket corrected. Technically, that makes us civilians with no jurisdiction or responsibility. Rocket, have you met me? When have I ever let technicalities stop me from doing something heroic and poorly planned? Before Rocket could respond, the Milano's rear sensors detected pursuit, not TIE fighters, which were too large to safely navigate the narrow tunnels, but something smaller. Probe droids, Peter's computer suggested after analyzing the contacts. Spherical reconnaissance units designed to track targets in environments where fighters couldn't follow. We've got company, Peter announced, checking his rear displays. 6 probe droids gaining fast. Rocket, can you? Already on it, Rocket confirmed, rotating the Milano's rear weapons array to engage. His targeting computer locked onto the pursuing droids, and plasma bolts streaked back through the tunnel. MCU weapons technology meeting Star Wars reconnaissance units in an encounter that neither universe's engineers had designed for. The first probe droid's shields, optimized to deflect blaster fire, couldn't adapt to plasma weapons operating on different energy frequencies. It exploded in a shower of sparks and expensive Imperial hardware. That's one, Rocket celebrated. These things aren't built for our weapons. Their shields don't know what to do with plasma. Then keep shooting, Peter encouraged, guiding the Milano through another impossible turn. And while you're doing that, can you analyze this tunnel system? We need an exit before we run out of asteroid to fly through. Working on it. But Quill, there's something weird about this tunnel configuration. It's not random. It's designed, like specifically engineered, to guide traffic towards something. And I'm reading a massive energy signature ahead, bigger than anything else in this asteroid. Whatever this place is, we're flying toward its core. The tunnel opened into a massive cavern, easily large enough to fit several battle stars, lined with more of those glowing crystals, and centered around something that made even Peter Quill, who'd seen a living planet and held an infinity stone, pause in genuine awe. A sphere, massive, floating in the cavern's center through some kind of artificial gravity or magnetic suspension. Its surface was covered in the same symbols that had decorated the station where they'd downloaded the Imperial data, and it pulsed with energy that Peter's celestial-touched senses recognized as power. Raw, ancient, dangerous power that predated both galaxies and didn't care about the distinction. What is that? Peter breathed. That, Rocket replied, his sensors going absolutely crazy trying to analyze it, is a kyber crystal. Enormous one. Like, this thing could power a city. Enormous. And according to the Imperial data we downloaded, kyber crystals are what the Death Star uses as its primary weapon component. Quill, we just found the Empire's kyber source. This is what they're protecting. This is why they're so desperate to get that data back, because it shows where they're mining the materials for their superweapon. So, we're inside a mine, Peter concluded. A mine built into an asteroid, harvesting giant crystals that power planet-killing weapons. And the Empire really doesn't want anyone to know about this place. Which means we should absolutely definitely leave right now, Rocket advised. We take this information. We find whoever's fighting the Empire. We trade it for help getting home. This is valuable intelligence. This is the kind of secret that could change a war. Peter studied the massive kyber crystal his mind racing through tactical possibilities and moral implications. He'd held the Power Stone, understood what it meant to possess something capable of destroying worlds. And now, he was looking at the material that another galaxy's tyrants used for the same purpose. We're not just leaving, Peter decided. We're taking it with us. What? You said it yourself. This is what powers their superweapon. If we take the crystal, they can't use it for the Death Star. We'd be preventing planetary genocide. Quill, that crystal is the size of the Milano. We can't just stick it in cargo hold. Not the whole crystal, Peter clarified, already maneuvering the Milano closer to the floating sphere. Just a piece. A big piece. Enough to prove we're serious when we contact this rebellion, and enough to delay the Empire's weapon construction while they mine more. This is insane, Rocket protested. This is genuinely insane, even by your standards. We don't have mining equipment. We don't have containment systems for Kyber energy. We don't even know if that thing is safe to touch. We have your Hadron Enforcer, Peter countered, which can probably crack the crystal if you dial it to maximum power. And we have the Milano's cargo shields, which have handled everything from sovereign batteries to angry symbiotes. We improvise. We grab a chunk of superweapon fuel, and we get out before the Imperials figure out what we're doing. I hate you so much right now. You keep saying that, but you're already charging the Hadron Enforcer, so clearly you agree with my brilliant plan. Rocket muttered something in Rocky that the translator wisely refused to interpret, but his hands were indeed activating the modified weapon he'd built from scavenged parts and aggressive engineering. Fine. But for the record, when this explodes and kills us both, I want my last words to be, I told you so. Noted, Peter acknowledged, bringing the Milano to a hover position near the massive crystal. Okay, here's the plan. You shoot the crystal, it cracks. We grab a chunk with the cargo bay's grappling systems, and we're gone before anyone notices. Before anyone notices us shooting a giant magical space crystal in the middle of an Imperial mining facility? Rocket asked skeptically. Yeah, I'm sure that'll go totally unnoticed. Peter opened the Milano's cargo bay, extended the grappling claws, and gave Rocket the signal. Do it. The Hadron Enforcer fired. Concentrated plasma energy designed to crack sovereign armor, hitting ancient Kyber crystal that had probably been growing undisturbed for millennia. The result was spectacular in the way that catastrophic energy cascade is always spectacular. The crystal didn't just crack. It exploded with light that filled the entire cavern, energy discharge that made the Milano's sensors scream warnings, and a harmonic resonance that Peter felt in his bones, despite never having encountered Kyber before. Grab it! Rocket shouted, already working the grappling controls. A chunk of crystal, roughly the size of a small vehicle, still glowing with barely contained energy, broke free from the sphere. The Milano's cargo claws closed around it, magnetic containment fields activating to prevent the crystal from destabilizing further. Got it, Peter confirmed. Cargo secured. Now The entire asteroid shook. Not from the crystal explosion, but from something worse. The Imperial fleet had apparently decided that subtle pursuit wasn't working and had escalated to blast the asteroid open and extract the targets from the debris. They're firing on the asteroid, Rocket reported, his sensors detecting massive turbolaser strikes hitting the exterior. They're going to crack this whole thing open. Quill, we need to leave now. Working on it, Peter replied, already accelerating toward what his sensors indicated was the tunnel exit. Hang on. This is going to be a bumpy... The cavern's ceiling collapsed. Tons of rock and ice falling toward them, turned into deadly projectiles by explosive decompression as the asteroid's integrity failed. Peter didn't think, didn't calculate, just flew on pure instinct, honed through years of impossible escapes, dodging falling debris with margins measured in centimeters, threading the Milano through gaps that closed even as he navigated them, trusting his enhanced reflexes and the awesome mix's rhythm to guide him when conscious thought would be too slow. "I want you back," the Jackson 5 sang as Peter performed a corkscrew roll through falling rock. "I want you back." "Not helpful," Rocket screamed, but his hands were working weapons and shields with equal desperation, shooting debris that was too large to dodge and reinforcing the sections of hull that were taking impacts. The tunnel exit appeared ahead, an opening to open space that represented freedom if they could just reach it before the asteroid finished collapsing. "Come on, baby," Peter urged the Milano, channeling every ounce of speed the ship's engines could provide. "Come on, you can do this. We've done harder. Remember that time we outran a sovereign fleet? This is just like that, but with more rocks and less gold people shooting at us." The Milano burst from the asteroid's surface like a missile launching, debris trailing behind them, kyber crystals secured in cargo, and every alarm on the ship screaming that they'd taken structural damage that would require extensive repairs. But they were out, in open space, with the collapsing asteroid between them and the Imperial fleet, buying them precious seconds to. "Multiple contacts," Rocket warned. "They positioned Star Destroyers on this side. They anticipated we'd exit here. We're surrounded." Peter looked at his tactical display and recognized the truth. The Empire had outplayed them. Star Destroyers blocked every escape vector. TIE fighters were deploying in formations that covered all probable flight paths. And worst of all, that distinctive Black Star Destroyer, the Executor, commanded by someone competent enough to predict unconventional tactics, was positioned directly in their path. "Quill," Rocket said quietly, "I don't think we can shoot our way out of this one." "Then we don't shoot our way out," Peter replied, studying the formation with tactical mind that had kept him alive through 100 impossible situations. "We talk our way out, or bluff our way out, or..." "Rocket, open a comm channel to that Black Star Destroyer. I want to talk to Commander Ree." "What are you going to say?" "I'm going to be honest," Peter decided. Well, mostly honest. Honest-ish. "I'm going to explain that we're not from around here. We didn't mean to steal their classified data, and we're willing to trade the information for safe passage and help getting home." "They'll never accept that." "Probably not," Peter agreed. "But while I'm talking, you're going to be analyzing the Imperial formation for weaknesses. Because if talking doesn't work, we're going to need a really crazy escape plan. All our escape plans are really crazy. Then this one will fit right in." Peter activated the comm, broadcasting to the Executor. "Commander Ree, this is Peter Quill again. Before you blow us up, I'd like to explain something that's going to sound insane, but is actually completely true. Imperial Star Destroyer. Executor, Bridge Commander Sienna Ree, stood before her tactical displays, studying the unknown vessel with expression, mixing professional respect and growing frustration. The ship, designation Milano, according to their communications intercept, had just accomplished what should have been impossible. Navigated an asteroid's interior tunnel system, extracted a kyber crystal chunk, and emerged intact, despite Imperial bombardment. "Status on the target vessel," Ree commanded. "Moderate hull damage, shields depleted to 40%, but engines are fully functional," her tactical officer reported. "They're not attempting to flee. They're broadcasting on open channels, audio only. Should I put it through?" Ree ordered. The voice that came through was young, male, carrying the particular confidence of someone who knew they were outmatched, but hadn't accepted it yet. Commander Ree, this is Peter Quill again. Before you blow us up, I'd like to explain something that's going to sound insane, but is actually completely true. We're not from your galaxy. We're from a completely different galaxy called the Milky Way, from a planet called Earth that you've never heard of. And we ended up here by accident through a combination of salvage job gone wrong and what I'm pretty sure was interdimensional portal malfunction. We didn't know that station was yours. We didn't know the data was classified. We're just scavengers who took a job and ended up way over our heads in someone else's war. Ree listened to the explanation with expression that gave away nothing. When Quill finished, she replied with careful formality, "Mr. Quill, your story is creative. I'll give you that. But it doesn't change the facts. You possess classified Imperial intelligence. You've stolen kyber crystal materials designated for military use. And you've demonstrated capabilities that suggest advanced training and resources. Claim ignorance if you wish, but your actions suggest otherwise." "Okay, fair point," Quill acknowledged. "But consider this. If we were actually Imperial enemies, would we be this bad at it? Like, really think about our operation here. We flew into your territory by accident, downloaded data without knowing what it was, got chased through an asteroid field, and barely escaped alive with a crystal we don't even know how to use. Does that sound like professional espionage, or does that sound like really unfortunate tourists?" Despite herself, Ree felt the corner of her mouth twitch in what might have been amusement. The pilot had a point. Actual rebel operatives would have been more subtle. Unfortunate or not, you possess materials the Empire cannot allow in unauthorized hands. Return the data and the kyber crystal, and I'll consider. "See? That's where we have a problem," Quill interrupted. "Because that data? It's about something called the Death Star, which our computer tells us is a space station designed to destroy entire planets. And that kyber crystal you want back? It's fuel for that planet killer. So from our perspective, handing that stuff over would make us complicit in planetary genocide. And we're generally against that. Galactic policy, you understand." Ree's expression hardened. "You're making accusations about Imperial military projects based on incomplete intelligence. The Death Star is a peacekeeping installation designed to destroy planets," Quill interrupted again. "Yeah, we got that part. Look, Commander, I'm sure you believe what you're saying. I'm sure the Empire has great PR about how their planet-destroying space station is actually for peace. But we've dealt with that kind of logic before in our galaxy, and it never ends well for anyone. So here's our counteroffer. We keep the data and the crystal as insurance. We find whoever's fighting against your Empire, and we trade them the intel in exchange for help getting home. You get to report that the materials were lost in the asteroid collapse. We get to not be accessories to genocide, and everyone walks away alive. That's called a win-win." "It's called treason," Ree corrected coldly, "and it will be met with immediate termination. Mr. Quill, I'm going to give you one final opportunity to comply. Power down your vessel, prepare to be boarded, and return Imperial property. Refuse, and I will order my fleet to open fire. You cannot escape. You cannot fight. Your options are surrender or die." Inside the Milano, Peter exchanged glances with Rocket, who'd been running calculations during the entire conversation. "Tell me you found a weakness in their formation," Peter said quietly. "I found something better," Rocket replied, his eyes gleaming with the particular expression that meant he'd just thought of something brilliant and dangerous. "I found out that these Star Destroyers have a design flaw. Their shield generators are positioned on the main hull, which means if we can get close enough, And I mean really close. Like kissing distance close. We can slip under their shields before they can target us effectively. And then what? Then we fly between the Star Destroyers at maximum speed, use their own ships as obstacles to prevent them from firing without hitting each other, and punch through their formation before they adapt. That's insane, Peter observed. You literally just flew through an asteroid. Okay, fair point. Let's do it. Peter activated his comm one more time. Commander Ree, I appreciate the professionalism. I really do. You've been way more reasonable than most people who chase us across space sectors. But here's the thing. We're guardians of the galaxy, and guardians don't surrender. We escape in ways that make tactical analysts reconsider their entire understanding of probable flight paths. So I'm sorry about this, but Rocket, hit it. The awesome mix shifted to Hooked on a Feeling at maximum volume, loud enough that the external speakers broadcasted across the tactical field, loud enough that every Imperial bridge crew within sensor range could hear Earth music from decades ago, playing at volumes that suggested psychological warfare or advanced insanity. The Milano accelerated directly toward the Executor, not away, not into an escape vector, but straight at the flagship in a maneuver that made every Imperial tactical officer scream warnings about imminent collision. "He's going to ram us," someone on the Executor's bridge shouted. "No," Ree said, watching the Milano's approach with growing comprehension. "He's going to slip under our shields. All vessels adjust shield harmonics to prevent." Too late. The Milano dove beneath the Executor's shield perimeter, with margins measured in meters, flying so close to the Star Destroyer's hull that Peter could see individual hull plates. Then it banked 90 degrees, threaded the gap between the Executor and the adjacent Star Destroyer, and essentially made the entire Imperial formation into an obstacle course that prevented them from firing without hitting their own ships. "This is insane," Rocket shouted, but his hands were already working the weapons console, firing at TIE fighters that attempted to intercept, while simultaneously reinforcing shields against the inevitable collision with something. "This is awesome," Peter corrected, his piloting shifting into pure instinct. No conscious thought, just reaction. Feeling the Milano's capabilities and the Imperial fleet's positions, and finding the path between them that shouldn't exist but did if you were willing to fly close enough to kiss hull plating. The Star Destroyers attempted to adjust, tried to target the Milano as it slipped between their formations. But Peter was flying too close, too fast, using their own tactical doctrine against them. Imperial regulations prohibited firing when friendly vessels were in the line of fire. Peter was making sure friendly vessels were always in the line of fire. "Exit vector ahead," Rocket reported. "If we can just reach, missile lock." One of the Star Destroyers had launched a tracking missile, a weapon designed to pursue targets through any evasive maneuver, to follow until it either struck or ran out of fuel. "I see it," Peter confirmed, watching the missile on his rear sensors. "Rocket, remember that thing we did with the Sovereign missiles? That barely worked and almost killed us." "But it worked! We're doing it again!" Peter killed the forward engines, fired reverse thrust, and essentially made the Milano perform a backwards flip in space, a maneuver that put them facing the pursuing missile while still traveling in the same direction. Rocket fired the Hadron Enforcer at point-blank range, detonating the missile before it could strike. The explosion pushed the Milano forward, actually accelerating their escape, and Peter used the momentum to slingshot around a particularly large piece of asteroid debris, executed one final impossible turn, and broke free of the Imperial formation. "We're clear," Rocket celebrated. We're actually clear." Never doubted it for a second, Peter replied, though his hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. Now plot a jump to literally anywhere that isn't here. Already on it. I'm picking random coordinates as far from this system as the Milano's jump drive can manage. It won't get us home, but it'll get us away from— Wait! Peter interrupted, his sensors detecting something new. There's another ship out there, small, single occupant. It's broadcasting distress on what sounds like rebel frequencies, and it's being pursued by TIE fighters. Quill, we need to leave. We're damaged. We're being hunted. We have no idea where we are. I know, Peter agreed. But we're also guardians, and guardians don't leave people to die when we can help. We're in the wrong galaxy. Doesn't change what we are, Peter replied, already adjusting course toward the distress signal. Hang on, we're making a rescue. Then we leave. I promise. The ship in distress was a Y-wing, rebel fighter that had clearly been on a scouting mission and gotten caught by Imperial patrol. Its pilot was broadcasting frantic calls for assistance that nobody was answering because there were no rebel forces in this sector. Nobody except two idiots from another galaxy who couldn't leave well enough alone. Unknown vessel. This is Wedge Antilles Rebel Alliance, the pilot transmitted. If you can hear this, I'm under attack by Imperial fighters. My shields are down. Weapons are damaged. I can't jump. If you can help, please. This is the Milano, Peter transmitted back. Wedge, my name's Peter, and we're about to do something really stupid to save your life. When I say break left, you break left. Got it? Who are you? How do you? Questions later. Surviving now. Rocket. Target those TIE fighters. The Milano swept into the engagement like a meteor, its weapons systems still operating on MCU plasma technology that Star Wars shields couldn't properly defend against, tearing through the pursuing TIE fighters with efficiency that made even Rocket pause in appreciation. Break left, Peter commanded. Wedge's Y-wing banked left just as the Milano fired through the space he'd occupied, destroying the final TIE fighter that had been on his tail. That's all of them, Rocket confirmed. Now can we please leave? Absolutely, Peter agreed. Wedge, you're clear. Get home safe. Tell your rebellion that the Milano says hi. And wait, Wedge transmitted. Who are you? I've never seen piloting like that. And your weapons, those weren't blasters. What are you? We're Guardians of the Galaxy, Peter replied as the Milano prepared to jump. And we're lost, confused, and carrying stolen Imperial data about something called a Death Star. If your rebellion wants that intel, tell them to find us. We'll be the ship playing Earth music and flying like nobody told us it was impossible. The Milano jumped before Wedge could respond, space distorting as the ship disappeared into a random vector that would take them far from Imperial pursuit. Inside the cockpit, Peter and Rocket sat in exhausted silence, the awesome mix playing softly in the background, the Kyber crystal secured in cargo radiating energy that neither of them fully understood. We just stole classified data from an evil empire, escaped through an asteroid, and saved a rebel fighter, Rocket summarized. In a galaxy we don't belong in, while being chased by people who want to kill us. This is officially the stupidest job we've ever taken. Yeah, Peter agreed. But we looked good doing it, and we saved someone. That counts for something. It counts for us being wanted criminals in 2 galaxies instead of just 1. Look at the bright side. At least the music was good. Rocket just groaned, already planning the 17 different ways he was going to modify the Milano's systems to handle whatever insanity this galaxy threw at them next. Because if there was one certainty, it was that Peter Quill couldn't leave well enough alone. and in a galaxy far, far away that was either going to get them killed or make them legends. Rebel Alliance Fleet, hidden rendezvous point, 36 hours after escape. Wedge Antilles stood in the briefing room aboard the Mon Calamari cruiser Home 1, surrounded by rebel leadership who were studying his report with expressions ranging from skepticism to cautious interest. General John Dodonna, Admiral Akbar, and Princess Leia Organa herself had assembled to hear about the impossible pilot who'd saved his life while escaping an Imperial blockade. "Let me be certain I understand," General Dodonna said, reviewing the tactical logs Wedge had recorded. "You were being pursued by 4 TIE fighters. Your shields were down. Your weapons malfunctioned. You were approximately 30 seconds from being destroyed. And then, an unknown vessel appeared. Destroyed all 4 TIEs in less than 10 seconds, using weapons that your sensors couldn't classify, and disappeared after claiming to possess stolen Imperial data about Death Star construction." "Yes, sir," Wedge confirmed. "But it's not just what they did, it's how they did it. Sir, I've flown against the Empire's best pilots. I've seen Commander Ree's tactics, studied Imperial flight doctrine, even analyzed captured TIE fighter combat footage. This pilot was different. He flew like the ship was an extension of his body, like he wasn't following any tactical manual. And he was playing music." "Music?" Princess Leia asked with raised eyebrow. "Yes, Your Highness. Strange music I've never heard before. Vocals and instruments that don't match any galactic standard. And he claimed to be from Earth, a planet that doesn't appear in any database. He called himself Peter and said he was a guardian of the galaxy. Plural, as if there were more of them. Could this be an Imperial trap?" Admiral Akbar suggested with his characteristic caution. "A fake defector with fabricated data designed to draw out our fleet?" "Unlikely," Leia replied, studying the sensor recordings of the Milano's weapons fire. "These energy signatures don't match any known Imperial technology. If this is a trap, it's more sophisticated than anything the Empire has attempted before. And the piloting Wedge describes..." She turned to her best pilot. "You're certain about this? Flight maneuvers that violate standard tactical doctrine?" "Your Highness, he flew through an asteroid," Wedge said, pulling up the sensor data that he'd captured before his systems failed. "Not around it, through it. The Milano entered a tunnel system that our computers flagged as navigational hazard unsuitable for any vessel larger than a probe droid, and emerged on the far side intact, while being chased by star destroyers. That shouldn't be possible. And yet it happened," Dodonna observed, "which suggests either our understanding of what's possible is incomplete, or this Peter is working with technology we don't recognize. Either way, if he genuinely possesses Death Star intelligence, we need to make contact. Assuming we can find him," Akbar noted. "His jump vector was randomized. He could be anywhere in the outer rim by now." "Actually," a new voice interrupted from the briefing room's entrance. "He's right outside your hangar bay, broadcasting on rebel frequencies, asking if anyone wants to trade super important Death Star stuff for help getting home to a galaxy that doesn't have evil empires." His exact words. The speaker was Captain Cassian Andor, Rebel Intelligence's best field operative, looking like he'd just received information that broke his understanding of how the galaxy worked. "They're here?" Leia asked with surprise. "How did they find us? This location is classified." "He said he followed our space frequency vibes and figured that rebels would gather somewhere that feels like hope, but looks defensible," Cassian replied with barely controlled disbelief. "Princess, I don't think this Peter Quill operates on conventional tactical logic. I think he operates on..." Instinct? Luck? I'm honestly not sure. Let them dock, Leia decided. But keep security on high alert. If this is a trap, I want us ready to respond. And if it's genuine. Her expression showed the particular hope that came from fighting a war against impossible odds. We might have just found an advantage the Empire doesn't know we possess. Milano, docking with Home 1. 20 minutes later. Peter Quill guided his ship into the Rebel cruiser's hangar bay with his characteristic combination of precision flying and casual disregard for safety protocols. He set the Milano down with a landing that was technically perfect, but psychologically alarming to the ground crew who'd watched him come in at velocities that suggested he'd forgotten the brakes existed. Okay, Peter said to Rocket as they prepared to disembark. We're meeting with Rebel leadership. This is our chance to trade the Death Star intel for resources and help getting home. So we need to be professional, diplomatic, and absolutely not mention that we're from a completely different universe because that sounds insane. Quill, we literally just told that pilot Wedge that we're guardians from Earth. Yeah, but I figured he'd think Earth was just some outer rim planet he hadn't heard of. We don't lead with interdimensional travelers. We ease into it. How do you ease into being from a different reality? Very carefully, with charm, and possibly by letting you do most of the talking because you're better with technical explanations. I hate when you make me the responsible one. They descended the Milano's ramp into the hangar bay, and Peter got his first good look at the rebellion that he'd accidentally joined. The hangar was organized chaos. Mechanics working on damaged fighters, pilots prepping for missions, soldiers moving equipment with the practiced efficiency of people who'd been at war long enough that military operations became routine. And waiting for them was a reception committee that Peter's MCU-trained instincts immediately identified as important people. A Mon Calamari in Admiral's uniform, an older human military officer, a young woman in white robes whose bearing screamed royalty, and several armed guards whose hands rested on weapons in the universal sign of, "We're ready if this goes bad." Peter Quill? The woman in white asked, stepping forward with diplomatic grace. I'm Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, representing the Rebel Alliance. Thank you for saving Lieutenant Antilles. And thank you for bringing us intelligence about Imperial operations. We're very interested in hearing what you've learned. Peter immediately recognized he was in the presence of someone important, not just politically, but fundamentally. The kind of person who commanded respect through competence rather than title, like Gamora had been. Like, don't think about Gamora. Focus on the mission. Your Highness, Peter replied, attempting courtly manners he'd learned from Yondu and refined through years of attempting to charm his way out of trouble. It's an honor, and I wish we could say saving your pilot was part of some grand plan. But honestly, we were just trying to escape, and he happened to need rescuing. We're good at accidental heroism. Accidental or not, we're grateful, Leia replied. But we have questions. Your ship, the Milano, uses technology our engineers don't recognize. Your weapons operate on principles our sensors can't classify. And according to Lieutenant Antilles, you fly using tactics that shouldn't work. Who are you? Where are you from? And why are you involved in our war against the Empire? Peter exchanged glances with Rocket, who shrugged in a, "You got us into this, you explain" gesture. Okay, full honesty time, Peter decided. Because you seem like someone who appreciates honesty, and also because lying to you would probably end badly for me. We're not from your galaxy. We're from a completely different galaxy called the Milky Way, from a planet called Earth that you've never heard of, because it exists in a different reality. We ended up here through an accident involving salvage, ancient technology, and what I'm pretty sure was an interdimensional portal. We didn't mean to steal your Empire's classified data. We thought we were just doing a routine scavenging job." The rebel leadership exchanged looks that clearly communicated, "Is he serious? And should we arrest him for wasting our time?" "You expect us to believe you're from another reality?" Admiral Akbar asked skeptically. "I expect you to think we're crazy," Peter replied honestly. "I'd think we were crazy too if I hadn't personally experienced it. But Princess, look at our ship's technology. Look at our weapons. Rocket, show them the Hadron Enforcer." Rocket reluctantly produced his modified weapon, a piece of engineering that combined Ravager scrap, Kree components, and his own aggressive genius into something that looked like it had been built by someone who understood advanced physics and hated the concept of safety regulations. "This," Rocket explained with professional pride overriding his reluctance, "is a Hadron Enforcer. It generates a focused plasma field that can crack sovereign armor, disable Kree warships, and apparently destroy your TIE fighters really easily, because your shields aren't calibrated for plasma weapons. It's built from technology that doesn't exist in your galaxy, because it was developed in ours. You can scan it, analyze it, compare it to every weapons system in your database. You won't find a match because it's literally from a different reality." The rebel engineers, who'd been listening, immediately moved forward with scanning equipment, their professional curiosity overriding skepticism. Within minutes, they were confirming what Rocket had claimed. The technology was fundamentally different from anything in known galactic databases. "Even if we accept your origin claim," General Dodonna said carefully, "that doesn't explain why you're helping us. If you're truly from another reality, this isn't your war. You could simply leave." "Yeah, we could," Peter agreed. "Except we can't actually get home without help. And you guys are the ones fighting against an evil empire that wants to build a planet-destroying space station. In our galaxy, we're called Guardians of the Galaxy. We protect people from big threats, and your Death Star definitely qualifies as a big threat. So we're offering a trade. We give you the Imperial data we accidentally stole, plus the Kyber crystal chunk we grabbed from their mining operation, and you help us figure out how to get home." "You have Kyber crystal?" Leia asked with sudden intensity. "From an Imperial mining operation? Show us." Peter led them to the Milano's cargo bay, where the massive crystal chunk sat secured in magnetic containment fields. The crystal pulsed with energy that even non-force-sensitive rebels could feel. Power that predated the Empire, that connected to something deeper than mere technology. "This is what powers the Death Star's main weapon," Peter explained. "We figured taking a chunk would slow down their construction and prove we're serious about helping. You can have it. Use it for your own weapons, study it, whatever. We just want to go home." Leia approached the crystal, and Peter noticed something strange. Her expression shifted, like she was hearing something the rest of them couldn't. Her hand moved toward the crystal unconsciously, before she caught herself. "You're force-sensitive," Peter observed, recognizing the signs from his own experience with cosmic power. "This crystal is talking to you, singing to you, however the Force works." "You know about the Force?" Leia asked with surprise. "I used to be half celestial," Peter replied. "My dad was a living planet with cosmic powers. I could manipulate matter and energy on a planetary scale. Then I killed him to save the galaxy, and the powers went away. But I still remember what it felt like to touch something bigger than myself. Your Force feels similar. Different flavor. Same basic concept." "You killed your father to save the galaxy," General Dodonna repeated slowly. "You were half God, and you're now offering us materials that could help destroy the Death Star, because you think it's the right thing to do despite this not being your war. When you say it like that, it sounds really dramatic, Peter said. But yeah, basically, we're guardians. We do the right thing even when it's inconvenient. It's kind of our whole deal. Rocket had been watching the rebel engineers examine the Hadron Enforcer with growing professional interest. Hey Quill, these guys are actually pretty good. They're asking smart questions about the plasma generation matrices. I might be able to work with them to adapt your rebel weapons to use some of our principles. Make your fighters more effective against Imperial shields. That's an incredibly generous offer, Leia said, processing the magnitude of what these strangers were proposing. You'd help us improve our weapons technology, train our engineers, all in exchange for help getting home, and maybe some supplies, Peter added. We took damage escaping your empire. The Milano needs repairs, and we're running low on fuel that's compatible with our jump drive. If you can spare the resources, we'd appreciate it. We can spare resources for allies who bring us Death Star intelligence and offer technological assistance, Leia decided. But I want full disclosure. What's in the Imperial data you downloaded? What exactly did you steal? Rocket pulled up the data on a portable holo display, information that made every rebel officer present lean forward with intense focus. Construction schematics for Death Star 2, mining locations for kyber crystals, personnel assignments for Imperial officers working on the project, supply chain logistics, even some communication protocols that might let you intercept their encrypted transmissions. Basically, we accidentally downloaded their entire Death Star playbook. This is... Dodonna trailed off, studying the data with the expression of someone who'd just been handed the galaxy's most valuable intelligence. This is extraordinary. With this information, we could plan sabotage operations. We could identify weak points in their construction. We could even determine when the station will be operational and prepare countermeasures. There's one problem, Cassian Andor interjected, having been studying the data over Dodonna's shoulder. If you stole this from an Imperial facility, they know it's compromised. They'll change their protocols, modify their construction plans, assume everything in this data has been leaked to us. It's valuable intelligence, but it has an expiration date. Then we use it fast, Leia decided with the tactical decisiveness that had made her a leader despite her youth. General Dodonna, I want operational plans for utilizing this intelligence within the week. Captain Andor, coordinate with our field operatives to verify the mining locations and supply chains. And Mr. Quill? She turned to Peter with expression that was part gratitude, part calculation. You and your friend Rocket are guests of the rebellion. We'll repair your ship, provide supplies, and dedicate resources to helping you find a way home. But while you're here, if you're willing to help us understand your technology and train our people in your unique piloting methods, we'd be grateful. You want me to teach rebel pilots how to fly like me? Peter asked with surprise. I want our pilots to expand their tactical thinking, Leia clarified. You flew through an asteroid using methods that our doctrine considers impossible. You escaped a Star Destroyer blockade that should have been inescapable, whether that's skill, technology, or sheer audacity. It's something we need. The Empire wins through overwhelming force and rigid doctrine. If we can learn to be more unpredictable, more creative, we gain an advantage they can't easily counter. I can teach unpredictability, Peter agreed. It's basically my specialty. But fair warning, my methods involve a lot of improvisation, loud music, and decisions that make tactical analysts cry. You sure your rebellion is ready for that? Our rebellion has been fighting a losing war against impossible odds for years, Leia replied with grim smile. I think we can handle a pilot who plays music during combat. Milano, being repaired. 48 hours later, Rocket sat in the Milano's engine room, surrounded by rebel engineers who were simultaneously fixing the ship's damage and studying its technology with fascination. The little raccoon, which these humans and aliens had been very surprised to learn, was a genetically engineered weapons expert from another reality, was in his element, explaining quantum drive mechanics to beings who'd never encountered anything like it. See, the problem with your hyperdrive technology, Rocket lectured, gesturing at holographic displays, is that it's linear. You punch through to hyperspace, follow a lane, emerge at your destination. It's fast, yeah, but it's predictable. Our jump drives calculate quantum probability fields and find the path of least resistance through space-time. It's more flexible, lets us make shorter jumps, but it requires more computational power. Could we integrate your drive technology with our hyperdrive? A Celestin engineer asked. Create a hybrid system that combines the advantages of both? Maybe, Rocket admitted, but you'd need processing power your ships don't have. Unless... His eyes lit up with the particular gleam that meant he'd just thought of something brilliant and probably dangerous. Unless we use your Navi computers as the base and augment them with processing cores built from salvaged Imperial computers. The Empire's droid brains are actually pretty sophisticated. If we stripped the loyalty programming and repurposed the neural networks for jump calculations. You want to build hybrid computers from Rebel and Imperial technology? The engineer asked with disbelief. I want to build better computers from whatever works, Rocket corrected. I don't care if components came from good guys or bad guys. I care if they function. You got a problem with that? No, sir, the engineer replied quickly. I think it's brilliant. Let's start with the damaged TIE fighter we captured last month. If we can extract its targeting computer intact. While Rocket revolutionized Rebel engineering in the hangar bay, Peter was in the pilot training room with Wedge Antilles and a handful of the Alliance's best pilots. The room was equipped with flight simulators that Peter had immediately declared cute but limited, before proceeding to demonstrate why. Okay, here's your problem, Peter said, watching Wedge navigate a simulated asteroid field using standard Rebel doctrine. You're flying like you've been trained. You're following the rules. You're making predictable choices based on optimal tactical responses. That works great against enemies who are also following rules. But against enemies who think outside the box, like me, you're vulnerable. So how do we become unpredictable? Wedge asked. You stop thinking of flying as a technical exercise and start thinking of it as an art, Peter replied. Watch. He took the simulator controls and navigated the same asteroid field, but his approach was completely different. Where Wedge had taken optimal paths and maintained safe distances, Peter flew closer, faster, using gravity wells and momentum in ways that the simulator's physics engine barely supported. You're violating 3 safety protocols and 2 navigation best practices, one of the other pilots observed. Yeah, but I'm alive, and I completed the run in half the time, Peter countered. In real combat, safety protocols are suggestions. Navigation best practices are starting points. What matters is completing the objective and surviving. Everything else is just bureaucracy. But how do we learn to fly like that? Wedge challenged. You make it look instinctive, like you're not even thinking about it. I'm not thinking, Peter confirmed. Not consciously. I'm feeling it. I grew up flying Ravager M ships through debris fields and combat zones. My mentor Yondu taught me that the secret to impossible flying is trusting your instincts more than your instruments. Feel the ship. understand its capabilities, and then push those capabilities in directions your enemies won't expect. That's not something we can teach in a simulator, another pilot noted. No, Peter agreed. You need real flight time, real pressure, real consequences, which is why he pulled up a tactical map. I'm proposing a joint training exercise. Your rebel pilots and me in the Milano, running a mock combat scenario against each other. You try to shoot me down using standard tactics. I fly unpredictably and demonstrate why creativity beats doctrine. Everybody learns, nobody dies, and you get practical experience fighting opponents who don't follow the rules. You want to dogfight against our best pilots? Wedge asked with competitive smile. All of them? Simultaneously? Yeah, why not? Peter replied with characteristic overconfidence. I escaped an entire Imperial fleet. I think I can handle a few rebel fighters. You're on, Wedge accepted. Training exercise tomorrow. Aero 800 hours. We'll see if your creativity beats our discipline. Loser buys drinks, Peter added. Deal. As the pilots dispersed to prepare for the training exercise, Wedge pulled Peter aside. Can I ask you something? About your galaxy? About Earth? Sure, Peter replied. You said you were taken from Earth when you were young, kidnapped by space pirates, raised among aliens, became a guardian, killed your own father to save people you barely knew. Wedge paused. Do you ever regret it? The choices you made? The life you ended up with, instead of the one you might have had? Peter considered the question honestly. He thought about Missouri, about his mom, about the normal life on Earth he'd lost when Yondu's Ravagers abducted him, about Gamora, lost to Thanos' insanity, about the Guardians scattered across the galaxy in the wake of the snap. Every day, Peter admitted, I regret that I never got to be normal, that my mom died and I wasn't there, that every person I've loved has either left or died, or disappeared. But, he paused, I don't regret being a guardian. I don't regret choosing to protect people even when it costs me, because the alternative is being someone who could have helped, but didn't. And I can't live with being that person, even in the wrong galaxy, even in a war that isn't mine. I'd rather be a guardian who regrets his losses than a bystander who regrets doing nothing. Wedge nodded slowly. We joined the rebellion for similar reasons. Most of us had normal lives, families, careers, futures that didn't involve fighting an empire. But we saw what the empire was doing, and we couldn't stand by. So we became soldiers, rebels. And yeah, we regret what we've lost, but we don't regret fighting. Then we understand each other, Peter said. Different galaxies, same choice. Help people or don't. We chose to help. Everything else follows from that. Meanwhile, Imperial Star Destroyer Executor, Deep Space Commander Sienna Rhee, reviewed the tactical analysis of the Milano's escape for the 17th time, and each review only deepened her frustration and professional respect. The pilot, this Peter Quill, had accomplished what should have been impossible through methods that violated every principle of Imperial tactical doctrine. Analysis complete, Commander. Her tactical officer reported. The unknown vessel designated Milano demonstrated capabilities inconsistent with any known galactic technology. Engine output suggests quantum-based FTL rather than standard hyperdrive. Weapons utilize plasma generation matrices that our shields weren't calibrated to defend against. And the pilot's flight patterns. He paused, clearly struggling with how to explain it. The pilot appears to incorporate random elements into his navigation, decisions that aren't optimal, but are unpredictable. Our targeting computers couldn't establish reliable firing solutions because he wasn't following any recognizable doctrine. In other words, he's either the most skilled pilot in the galaxy or the luckiest, Ree summarized. Possibly both, Commander. Ree studied the holo recording of the Milano's asteroid flight one more time. The ship moved through impossible spaces with grace that suggested the pilot understood three-dimensional navigation at an intuitive level that most beings never achieved. It reminded her of stories about force-sensitive pilots, Jedi who could feel the proper path rather than calculate it. Could he be force-sensitive? Ree wondered aloud. Unknown, Commander. But his companion, the small furred creature identified as Rocket, demonstrated technical expertise that suggests advanced engineering knowledge. They're not just skilled, they're equipped with technology and training that doesn't match any known galactic faction, which makes them either incredibly valuable potential assets or incredibly dangerous potential enemies, Ree concluded. Have we tracked their jump vector? Negative, Commander. They utilized random coordinates that our sensors couldn't predict, but the tactical officer pulled up additional data. We intercepted communications between the Milano and a rebel Y-wing. Quill claimed to possess Death Star intelligence and suggested he would seek out the rebellion to trade information for assistance. If he makes contact with Alliance forces, we may be able to track him through rebel activity. Or he could disappear into the Alliance fleet and we'll never find him, Ree countered. Either way, this Peter Quill is now a priority target. I want intelligence allocating resources to identifying his origin, his capabilities, and his objectives. And I want tactical developing countermeasures for his flight patterns. If we encounter him again, I don't want him escaping through creative piloting. I want him captured or destroyed. Yes, Commander. Should we inform Lord Vader about this incident? Ree considered it. Lord Vader was known for his intense interest in unusual force phenomena and potential threats to the Empire. A pilot who demonstrated impossible abilities and claimed to be from another reality would definitely attract Vader's attention. But it would also mean losing control of the investigation. Vader would take command, and Ree would be sidelined. Not yet, Ree decided. We'll handle this through conventional intelligence channels first. If Quill proves to be more than just a skilled pilot with unusual technology, we'll escalate to Lord Vader's attention. But I want the opportunity to capture him ourselves first. Understood, Commander. As her crew returned to their duties, Sienna Ree studied the frozen image of the Milano disappearing into hyperspace, Bo playing that strange Earth music that her sensors had recorded. She replayed the audio, Hooked on a Feeling, by someone called Blue Swede, and tried to understand what kind of being would fly into combat with music playing. Someone confident, someone creative, someone dangerous precisely because he didn't follow the rules that made other opponents predictable. The Empire had spent years refining tactics that worked against conventional enemies. But Peter Quill wasn't conventional, and that made him either the key to understanding a new kind of threat or the beginning of something the Empire wasn't prepared to handle. Back on Home 1, night of the training exercise. Peter sat in the Milano's cockpit, preparing for the next day's mock combat against rebel pilots. The ship was repaired, upgraded with some hybrid rebel MCU technology that Rocket had engineered, and ready to demonstrate what Guardian-class flying looked like. His awesome mix played softly, Come and Get Your Love, cycling through his speakers, reminding him of home, of the Guardians, of Gamora dancing despite claiming she didn't dance. You okay? Rocket's voice came from the cargo bay, where the Raccoon was performing final equipment checks. Yeah, Peter replied. Just thinking. About the Guardians. About whether they're looking for us. About whether we'll ever get home. The Rebellion scientists are working on it, Rocket reminded him. They're analyzing the dimensional signature from our arrival. They think they can recreate the portal if they get enough data and resources. It'll take time, but it's possible. And in the meantime, we're here, Peter said. In a galaxy that's fighting the same war we've fought before. Evil empire, desperate rebellion, impossible odds. It's like the universe has a template. Maybe it does, Rocket suggested. Maybe every reality has its tyrants and its heroes. Maybe being a guardian means fighting wherever you end up, whatever galaxy you're in. That's surprisingly philosophical for you. I have depth. You just don't notice because you're usually too busy making terrible decisions. Peter laughed, despite himself. Fair point. You ready for tomorrow? These rebel pilots are good. Wedge especially. They're going to give us a real challenge. Please, Rocket scoffed. We escaped a sovereign fleet, fought Ronin, survived Ego. Some rebel fighters aren't going to. Don't jinx it, Peter interrupted. Every time you say something's going to be easy, it becomes a nightmare. That's superstition. That's pattern recognition. They bantered like they always did, like the Guardians always had, finding comfort in familiar rhythms, even in an unfamiliar galaxy. Tomorrow they would demonstrate that Guardian-style flying could teach rebels new tactics. Tomorrow they would prove that help could come from unexpected places. Tomorrow they would show that even in Star Wars galaxy, there was room for MCU heroes who flew to Earth music and made impossible look routine. But tonight, Peter Quill sat in his ship and played his awesome mix, and remembered that no matter how far from home he got, some things stayed constant. Music, friendship, the choice to help people who needed it. Being a guardian transcended galaxies, and Star-Lord was going to make sure this rebellion understood exactly what that meant. Independent engagement protocols. No more formations he can exploit. Pick your own approach vectors and... Bad idea, Peter interrupted, having monitored their tactical channel. You're way better coordinated. Don't give up your biggest advantage just because I made you look silly once. Why are you giving us tactical advice? Wedge demanded. Because this is a training exercise, Peter replied, executing a barrel roll that put 2 A-wings in each other's line of fire. I'm supposed to be teaching you. Lesson 1. Don't abandon what you're good at just because your opponent is unpredictable. Lesson 2. Watch your spacing. Rocket fired, registering hits on both A-wings while they were tangled in their own firing solutions. 3 down. Rocket celebrated. Quill. These pilots are good, but they're not used to fighting chaos. They expect opponents to follow some kind of tactical logic. Then let's get really chaotic, Peter decided. He killed all engines, fired reverse thrust, and made the Milano stop dead in space. A maneuver that every pursuing fighter overshot because they'd been anticipating forward momentum. The Milano rotated 180 degrees while stationary, now facing backward relative to its previous heading, and Rocket engaged 4 more fighters before they could correct their positions. 7 down, Peter announced with glee. Come on, rebels. You're supposed to be the galaxy's best pilots. Show me something impressive. You want impressive? Wedge transmitted, and Peter detected a shift in the remaining fighters' approach patterns. They weren't coordinating through standard tactics anymore. They were coordinating through improvisation, learning from Quill's own methods. 2 X-wings approached from opposite vectors, not in formation, but in deliberately unsynced timing. An A-wing dove from above at an angle that violated optimal pursuit protocols, but created an impossible firing triangle. The last 2 fighters hung back, watching Peter's response patterns, learning his tendencies. Now that's better, Peter approved, genuinely impressed. He evaded the converging fire through a corkscrew maneuver that combined forward acceleration with rotating thrust, creating a helix flight path that made targeting him nearly impossible. "He's adapting to our adaptation," one pilot observed. "Then we adapt faster," Wedge replied. "All remaining fighters on my mark, execute randomization pattern Delta. Just make stuff up and see what works." "That's not a real tactical maneuver," another pilot protested. "Neither is anything Quill's doing," Wedge countered. "We're fighting improvisation with improvisation. Mark." The remaining 5 rebel fighters attacked with coordinated chaos, each pilot using techniques that weren't in any manual, combining elements from different doctrines, essentially making up tactics in real time. And Peter laughed with genuine delight, because finally, they were getting it. He evaded. He countered. He flew through their improvised patterns with his own improvisation. And the engagement became something beautiful. 2 different philosophies of combat dancing through space, in patterns that looked random, but were filled with intent and creativity. Rocket registered hits on 2 more fighters, but the Milano also took simulated damage as Wedge managed to land a shot that would have disabled their shields. 8 down, but we're hit, Rocket reported. "Quill, these guys are learning fast." "Good," Peter replied. "That's the point." "Okay, Wedge, I'm impressed. You adapted mid-combat, learned from observation, and applied creative tactics. That's exactly what I was hoping to teach. But here's the thing." He executed a maneuver that he'd been saving for last. The Milano's engines fired in a pattern that shouldn't create stable thrust, multiple vectors simultaneously, conflicting force directions that normal ships would find impossible to manage. But the Milano wasn't a normal ship, and Peter had years of experience pushing its capabilities beyond design specifications. The ship moved in 3 dimensions simultaneously, forward, lateral, and vertical, all while rotating on multiple axes. It was less like flying, and more like the Milano was dancing through space in patterns that required either enhanced spatial awareness or complete insanity. The remaining 3 rebel fighters tried to track the impossible movement, but their targeting computers literally couldn't establish firing solutions because the Milano's trajectory violated the mathematical models their systems used to predict target positions. That's not possible," a pilot transmitted. "Our computers are showing targeting errors. You can't fly like that." "I very obviously can," Peter replied cheerfully. Rocket registered final hits on all 3 remaining fighters, and the training exercise concluded with the Milano scoring simulated kills on all 12 opponents, while taking only 1 hit. "Exercise complete," the tactical officer announced from Home 1. "Milano wins. Final score, 12-1. Time elapsed, 8 minutes, 43 seconds. In the CIC, Admiral Akbar stared at the tactical replay, with expression mixing awe and tactical recalculation. He defeated our best squadron in under 9 minutes, using techniques that shouldn't work according to any known flight physics. Because he's not flying according to our physics, Leia realized. He's flying according to his galaxy's physics. His ship's capabilities are different. His training emphasized different principles, and he combined all of that with sheer creativity that our pilots weren't prepared for. But by the end, our pilots were adapting, Dodonna noted, studying the final engagement patterns. They learned to improvise, to think outside tactical doctrine. That's valuable. That's exactly what we need against the Empire's rigid strategies. Permission to dock, Home 1? Peter's voice came through comms. I believe I owe some pilots a conversation about what they did right, what they did wrong, and why chaos is actually a tactical advantage when used correctly. Permission granted, Leia replied. And Mr. Quill? That was remarkable. I'd like to discuss incorporating your training methods into our broader pilot development program. Happy to help, Your Highness. But fair warning, my training methods involve a lot of loud music, questionable decisions, and trusting instincts over instruments. Your pilots ready for that? After what we just witnessed, I think they're ready for anything. Milano, Hangar Bay. 1 hour later. The Milano's ramp was surrounded by rebel pilots who wanted to understand how Peter had accomplished the impossible. Wedge stood at the front, his competitive nature balanced by genuine respect for skills he'd just witnessed. "Okay, I'll admit it," Wedge said. "You're the best pilot I've ever seen. Better than any Imperial ace. Better than our own legends. How did you do it? And more importantly, can you teach us?" "I can teach you the principles," Peter replied, descending the ramp with Rocket following behind. "But understanding them and executing them are different things. What I do requires trusting your instincts over your training. It requires being comfortable with chaos, and it requires accepting that sometimes the best tactical decision is the one that makes no tactical sense." "That's contradictory," one of the Y-Wing pilots observed. "Welcome to my entire life," Peter replied with a grin. "But here's the real lesson. You guys did great, especially at the end when you started improvising. That's what I wanted to see. You stopped following doctrine and started creating your own tactics in real time. That's what wins battles against enemies who think they've predicted your every move." "But we still lost," Wedge pointed out. "You lost the exercise," Peter corrected. "But you won the lesson. You learned to adapt, to think creatively, to use unpredictability as a weapon. Take that back to your squadrons. Teach other pilots, and suddenly the Empire is facing rebel forces that don't fight the way their tactical computers predict. That's a strategic advantage worth more than any single victory." "He's right," a new voice agreed. Princess Leia approached with several rebel commanders. "What we witnessed today wasn't just exceptional piloting. It was a demonstration that our assumptions about combat doctrine may be limiting us. Mr. Quill, I'd like to formally request that you and Rocket remain with the fleet as tactical advisors, while our scientists work on returning you to your galaxy. Your insights could help us develop new strategies against the Empire." "Your Highness, we're happy to help," Peter replied. "But there's something you should know. The Empire is looking for us specifically." Commander Ree seemed really interested in capturing the Milano and figuring out where we came from. "If we stay with your fleet, we might be putting you at risk." "We're already at risk," Leia countered. "We're fighting a war against overwhelming odds. Having advisors who think differently, who bring technology and tactics the Empire hasn't encountered, that's worth the risk. Unless you'd prefer to hide until you can go home." "Your Highness, hiding isn't really my style," Peter said. "If you want our help, you've got it. Guardians don't run from fights just because they're dangerous." "Then it's settled," Leia decided. "You'll work with our tactical division on developing new combat doctrines. Rocket will consult with our engineering teams on weapons and systems improvements. And both of you will help us analyze the Death Star data for vulnerabilities we can exploit." "About that data," Rocket interjected, pulling up holographic schematics. "I've been studying the Death Star designs, and I found something interesting. Your Empire built this thing with a fundamental design flaw." Every rebel commander immediately focused on Rocket with intense attention. "What kind of flaw?" Dodonna asked. "A thermal exhaust port," Rocket explained, highlighting a tiny point on the massive station's surface. "It's ray-shielded, so conventional weapons can't hit it from outside, but it leads directly to the main reactor. If you could get a shot inside that port, I'm talking precision that requires impossible accuracy, you could trigger a chain reaction that destroys the entire station. That's a 2-meter target on a station the size of a small moon," Wedge observed. "Even with computer assistance, Making that shot would require someone who can make impossible shots. Peter interrupted, understanding where this was going. Someone who trusts instincts over instruments. Someone who's comfortable with chaos. Someone like a Jedi, Leia said quietly. Or someone like you. Your Highness, I'm not a Jedi, Peter clarified. I'm just a really good pilot with a ship full of Earth music and questionable life choices. But if you're planning an assault on the Death Star, and you need pilots who can make impossible shots, yeah, I'm in. The Guardians have stopped planet killers before. We can do it again. The Death Star is still under construction according to this data, Dodonna noted. We have time to plan, time to prepare. But Mr. Quill is right. When we make our move, we'll need pilots who can execute tactics the Empire won't anticipate. Then we train, Wedge decided. We take Quill's methods and we practice them until they become second nature. We turn our entire fighter corps into pilots who can improvise, adapt, and make the impossible look routine. I like the way you think, Peter approved. Okay, here's the training program. Every pilot spends time flying with music. I'll share some tracks from my awesome mix. You pick songs that make you feel confident, energized, ready to do impossible things. Then you practice flying to the rhythm. Let the music guide your movements instead of your tactical computer. That's insane, someone muttered. That's Guardian doctrine, Peter corrected. And it works. Trust me, I've escaped death more times than I can count using exactly this method. As the pilots dispersed to begin their unorthodox training, Rocket pulled Peter aside. Quill, we're getting really involved in this galaxy's war. Are we sure that's smart? We're supposed to be finding a way home, not fighting Death Stars. Rocket, you saw those schematics, Peter replied quietly. The Death Star destroys planets, entire worlds, billions of people. If we can help stop that, if we can teach these rebels how to win, isn't that worth staying a little longer? And if we can't get home? Rocket challenged. What if we're stuck here permanently? What if the Guardians back in our galaxy think we're dead? What if we never see them again? Peter considered it honestly. The possibility that he'd never see the Guardians again, never return to his galaxy, never complete the mission they'd started before the interdimensional accident. Then we make a new mission, Peter decided. We help this rebellion win. We stop a planet killer. We prove that being a Guardian means something, regardless of which reality you're in. And we trust that somehow, some way, we'll find our way back. Because we're Guardians, Rocket. And Guardians don't give up just because the odds are impossible. You're going to get us killed, Rocket predicted. Probably, Peter agreed. But at least we'll look good doing it. Imperial Intelligence Headquarters, Coruscant. Same time Agent Callus reviewed the intelligence reports with growing concern. The Milano had been spotted in 3 different sectors over the past week, always near rebel activity, always demonstrating capabilities that Imperial analysts still couldn't explain. And worse, the rebellion's fighter tactics were changing. Pilots who'd previously followed predictable patterns were now incorporating improvisation and creativity that made them significantly harder to counter. The Milano is training rebel pilots, Callus concluded, presenting his analysis to Imperial Command. This Peter Quill isn't just sharing intelligence about the Death Star. He's teaching the Alliance how to fight differently, how to think differently, and it's working. Our engagement success rates against rebel fighters have dropped by 14% in sectors where the Milano has been active. Then we eliminate the Milano, his superior replied. We dedicate resources to hunting this ship and its pilot. We demonstrate that the Empire doesn't tolerate threats, regardless of their origin. With respect, sir, I recommend caution, Callus countered. Every attempt to capture or destroy the Milano has failed. Commander Ree's task force, 3 different Imperial squadrons, even an attempted ambush using captured rebel intelligence, all failures. This pilot is either extraordinarily skilled or extraordinarily lucky. Possibly both. Treating him as a conventional threat may be exactly the wrong approach. What do you suggest? I suggest we study him, Callus proposed. We analyze his methods. We learn from his tactics the same way the rebels are learning. We adapt our own doctrine to counter his unpredictability. Because if we can understand how he thinks, we can predict what he'll do. And if we can predict him, we can trap him. And if we can't, then we're facing something the Empire wasn't designed to fight, Callus admitted. An opponent who doesn't follow rules, doesn't respect conventions, and doesn't care that we're supposed to be invincible. In other words, the kind of threat that could actually hurt us. The decision was made. Imperial intelligence would dedicate resources to understanding Peter Quill. They would study his recorded engagements. They would analyze his psychological profile. They would find his weaknesses. Because the Empire didn't tolerate threats. And Peter Quill, whether he knew it or not, had just become the Empire's most wanted target. 3 months later, the Milano drifted in formation with the Rebel fleet, now bearing Rebel Alliance markings alongside Peter's custom paint job. The ship had been upgraded with hybrid technology, quantum drives enhanced with hyperdrive components, weapons systems that combined MCU plasma with SW energy weapons, shields that incorporated the best of both galaxies' defensive theories. And inside the ship, Peter Quill and Rocket sat in the cockpit, listening to reports about the Death Star's construction progress and planning strategies for the inevitable confrontation. The Rebellion scientists think they can create a stable interdimensional portal, Rocket reported, studying their calculations. It'll take 6 months, maybe a year, but they can probably send us home. And the Death Star will be operational in 8 months, Peter noted, which means we'll be here for the battle. Yeah, Rocket agreed. We will. You okay with that? Peter thought about it, about the Guardians in his galaxy, about the Rebellion in this one, about the choice between going home and finishing what they'd started. I'm okay with it, Peter decided. We're Guardians. We stop planet killers. That's what we do. And when the Death Star is destroyed, when this galaxy's safe, we'll go home, back to our Guardians, back to our fights. But until then, we're Star Wars' most unexpected heroes, Rocket finished. Exactly, Peter confirmed. He activated the awesome mix and, come and get your love, filled the Milano's cockpit. 2 Guardians in the wrong galaxy, fighting someone else's war, teaching rebels that chaos was a weapon, and preparing to prove that when MCU meets Star Wars, when Guardian-class flying meets Death Star vulnerability, when Earth music meets space opera, the impossible becomes routine, the unlikely becomes legendary, and Peter Quill's terrible decisions become galaxy-saving heroism. This is Star-Lord. And yes, we're still playing music during combat. Deal with it. 6 months later, when the Rebellion launched its desperate assault on the Death Star, the Milano flew alongside X-Wings and Y-Wings in an attack that would determine the galaxy's fate. Peter Quill's training had transformed Rebel fighter tactics into something the Empire couldn't predict. His music played across all Rebel frequencies, giving pilots rhythm to fly by when instruments failed. And when the critical moment came, when a young farm boy named Luke Skywalker made an impossible shot into a 2-meter thermal exhaust port, using the Force and trust rather than targeting computers, Peter recognized the same principle he'd been teaching all along. Sometimes the best tactics were the ones that made no sense. Sometimes instinct beat calculation. Sometimes you had to trust something bigger than yourself, whether that was the Force, or the awesome mix, or just the belief that good people fighting impossible odds could win anyway. The Death Star exploded. The rebellion celebrated. And Peter Quill, interdimensional guardian, who'd stumbled into someone else's war, proved that heroism transcended galaxies. A year later, when rebel scientists finally opened the portal home, Peter and Rocket stood at the threshold between realities. Behind them was a galaxy they'd helped save. Ahead was the family they'd been separated from. You could stay, Princess Leia offered. The rebellion could use guardians. This galaxy could use your help. And we'd love to stay, Peter replied honestly. But we've got our own galaxy to protect, our own guardians to find, our own impossible battles to fight. But hey, if your scientists ever figure out reliable interdimensional travel, look us up. The Guardians of the Galaxy are always available for guest appearances in other realities. They stepped through the portal. Space distorted, reality shifted, and the Milano returned to the MCU, carrying with it stories about a galaxy far, far away, where Earth music had become rebel battle anthem, where a raccoon had revolutionized engineering, and where Star-Lord had proven that being a guardian meant something regardless of which universe you defended. Back in the Star Wars galaxy, rebel pilots still flew to awesome mix tracks. Engineers still used hybrid rocket-designed systems. And when young pilots asked about the legendary Peter Quill, who'd taught the rebellion to improvise, veterans would smile and say, he was a guardian from another reality. He flew like dancing, fought like chaos, and saved our galaxy because that's what guardians do. And if you ever hear Earth music playing during combat, know that somewhere, in some reality, Star-Lord is making the impossible look easy. The Guardians of the Galaxy exist across all realities because some things transcend dimensions: music, heroism, and the belief that nobody should face darkness alone. I'm Star-Lord. From every galaxy, in every reality, and the awesome mix plays on.